My name's Rob Malone. Myself and my partner Pamela Wright bought what we now call Anakatilla Springs, which is on Mayurna land, in 2012. We've been looking at the rejuvenation of the ecology and also the farming aspect of the property. So when we bought the property in 2012, it was actually 106 hectares. Since then, we've had to sell off bits and pieces, and so now we are down to 53 hectares. Before that, it was part of the big Anakatilla station, ended up being 2,500 acres. So it was heavily grazed with cattle and sheep when we first got it. When you were talking about a regen ag, part of the main thing is the ecology aspect of it, that to do the regen ag and the ecology, that by fencing off the watercourse, the farming won't work unless you set up a good system of pipes, tanks and troughs. And then that works into the regen ag aspect of the smaller paddocks that we're creating, but we then need to make sure that we've got continual water supply. We're very fortunate that we've got the Anakatilla River running through the middle of our property, which we have fenced off in the very beginning, and that's one of the few rivers on the Fleurieu that runs all year. It's spring fed, so that's where we have our source of water. We have quite a big up and down flux of the amount of cattle we have, so by using rotational grazing, we hope to better the outcome for the cattle, but also the outcome for the soil within it. The cost of the infrastructure was quite a lot to do this style, where it would have been easier just to let the cattle drink from the river. But that wasn't what we wanted. We wanted to try and look at a long-term investment. We're finding here that the cyclical nature of nature, that you have to do things when you have to do them, and then you have to wait to see the results. And then if that doesn't work, then you wait again and you try something different. So being involved in the groups, like the Regen Ag group, is great because you can talk to other people who have both larger properties, have been doing this type of thing for some time. We've been to their properties, we've heard talks with them, so it's good to see people who have to make a living from this, to see how they do it, and then we can apply it to our situation. But it is a costly enterprise, and we see it as an investment in the future for our children or anyone else's children. From here is a good example of, you can see the smaller paddocks that we're creating. We go from a variety of 0.75 a hectare, but we try to keep them either about 1.5 hectares to 2 hectares. And with permanent fencing is what we're doing. Bigger paddocks, I may look towards using electric fencing at times to make, when we've got high growth, to try and get that high density in a short period of time and move them on. The cattle are the result of us looking after the soil. So looking after the soil is the main thing that we're doing. And with that also comes, because we've got the ecological regeneration as well, that we are finding we're getting benefits for pastures. With Dick Richardson's method is that you have one paddock which is a Sabbath, not used at all, which is one just down there where the temporary yards are. What we're finding with that is we've got 3 new species of birds, grass birds, that we've seen this year that we never have before. So they're in that long grass because it's not disturbed. So that's something where I can now look at, when I next have a Sabbath paddock, to try and make it closer to that paddock so the birds can migrate and hopefully increase. The paddock trees also, the reason we don't try and do it in strip lines would have been easy, but my understanding this area was grassy woodlands when Whitefella first got here. So the paddock trees, the idea with them is to create connections between the current trees around the place, so that the birds, bugs and everything else have these corridors to try and go through, to add shade, which is a major thing for the cattle, and also multiple points for them to have shade so they don't just camp under one area. One of the biggest problems, as everyone who has got cattle knows about doing paddock trees, is cattle, because you've got a 750 kilo beast pushing on something and it wrecks everything. So the design that I'm using here, over time I've had now 8 versions of what I call the Alcatraz, and so it's failures and redesigns, but it's basically, it has been successful in that we've been able to grow trees.
To plug another organisation is of course Trees for Life. They have a list of what's endemic to this region, including understory and trees, so that's where we've been sourcing our most of our seedlings from, is from Trees for Life. The NRM have been so helpful, Landscapes SA now, in practical advice about what to do and how to give things the best chance of survival.
With this weir that was built in 1907 by Garnet Kelly. That is our main water source, and as you can see is flowing a little bit at the moment. We have a solar pump that gets the water from here and pumps all the way up to the top, which is a lift of 120 metres over 700 metres. From that main line, I then have other lines and valves coming off that then supply 5 other tanks, which is where we keep the water that then feeds the trough around the place. But the small plastic troughs I can move different times when they come in here. As part of the regen ag, you don't want a complete bare area like this. So when they come back in here, maybe in a few months' time, I'll move it to a complete different area. And I do find that this stuff does regrow. What I will be trying to do too is getting multi-seeds and planting, throwing them in these areas in spring to see what happens from there as well, just to try and add that. But certainly I move these all the time. I'm seeking the shade from one of our first paddock trees. This was planted in 2014. And something that Pamela and I joke about is once we see an animal taking shade under it, we say it's a tree. So first of all, we saw kangaroos often taking shade here. We'll see birds through them a lot, but also it's now big enough that it can offer the shade to the cattle as well. And that's our long-term plan, to have various spots for them for the shade. With the smaller paddocks and with our Murray Grey cattle, which are relatively docile animal, we use what's commonly known as low stress stock management. Up you go, all of you up. Come on. So we don't use bikes, we don't use motorbikes, we don't use dogs or anything else. We just walk them to the different areas. We also don't use food as a method to move them. We use their natural flight zone. Come on, Warwick, up you go. And through learning the techniques of that, usually, most of the time, we can move them okay, with less stress to them and less stress to us. Doesn't always work, but it does work fairly well. As you may have saw, walking the cattle around, people say farmers don't walk, but it's the best way to see what's going on. So we have dung beetles. We've been in dung beetle projects as well. They are great. So taking actions to improve them, improve the soil, and just enjoy what we're doing.
I just can't believe I live in this beautiful land. Every time I look out, walk around, I think I'm so lucky to be living here. I enjoy the reserves. The reserves are really interesting because there's so many different things going on in there. There's a lot more bird life that you can see, and the kangaroos that are always around the place. I enjoy doing the planting there and checking out how the previous plantings have gone and all of that. So that's something I do really enjoy.